She left home one November evening in 1954, stepping into the night with a story she never got to finish. The next day, her body was found in a place she had no reason to be. What followed was a case that gripped the city of Baltimore. Rumors ran wild. Was it revenge? A warning? A cover-up? Police chased down leads within the drape subculture of the era, but none led to justice. This is not just the story of a young girl whose life was stolen. It's the story of a city caught between two cultures, and how a single brutal act exposed just how fragile the balance between the two could be. This is the story of Carolyn Wasilewski. Hello friends, my name is Marcia, and this is Midwest Murders. In the early 1950s, Baltimore was a city at a crossroads. The war was over, but tensions simmered beneath the surface, racially, socially, and economically. Industry was booming, with shipyards and factories still powering much of the economy, yet the cracks were beginning to show. The once thriving port city struggled with rising crime, urban decay, and widening inequality. Teen culture was emerging, fueled by rock and roll, rebellion, and a generation no longer content to live by their parents' rules. But in the working-class neighborhoods, where families often lived under the watchful eye of neighbors, reputation was everything, especially for young women. Any hint of impropriety could ruin a girl's standing, and shame was a powerful tool. Against this backdrop, youth gangs and so-called drapes made headlines. Concerns about juvenile delinquency filled the newspapers, often rooted more in moral panic than reality. But real dangers did exist, especially for teenage girls who didn't conform to expectations. For clarification in this video, drapes was a youth subculture specific to Baltimore that emerged in the 1950s. They were known for their association with rockabilly music, hot rods, and a rebellious lifestyle. The young men typically wore jackets and high-waisted narrow pants, frequently worn to showcase their socks. They wore high-polished shoes and distinctive longer hairstyles. In other parts of the country, they were called greasers or teddies. Carolyn Loretta Wasilewski was just 14. The oldest of 7 children, she liked dancing, good times, and drape gangs. She was a student at Southern High School. Carolyn looked much older than her age and had gained a reputation for living beyond her years. Carolyn had strong feelings for a 20-year-old named Paul, who had been in the state reformatory for males for a month preceding her murder. He had been sentenced for breaking and entering and grand larceny charges. In interviews, Carolyn's mother referred to Paul as Carolyn's boyfriend. Carolyn was considered to be part of the local drape gang and went by the street name Peaches. She had been getting into little bits of trouble and had begun running away. The year before her murder, she had been committed by her parents to the House of Good Shepherd, a home for delinquent girls. She spent 3 weeks there, and at the time of her death, Carolyn's mother believed she was trying to get straightened out. Karen lived with her father Stanley, a guard at a dry dock company, her mother Mary, and her siblings at 3121 Mardell Avenue. To avoid the long Polish name, the family usually went by the last name Wells. On Monday, November 8, 1954, Carolyn left home, wearing curlers in her hair covered by a bandana, at about 6:15 p.m. to meet a friend, 16-year-old Peggy LaManna, at the Southway, a teenage hangout on Washington Boulevard. The 2 girls were planning to head to the Morrell Park Elementary School at Washington and Spence to register for a social club. Carolyn told her family there was a dance afterward, and she planned to stay for that. When she didn't return home, her parents began looking for her. The following morning, Tuesday, November 9th at around 7 a.m., the engineer of a Pennsy Express train traveling from Baltimore to Harrisburg spotted what appeared to be a crumpled body lying face down on the southbound Pennsylvania Railroad tracks just north of Belvedere Avenue Bridge and east of Rogers Avenue in Mount Washington. He immediately alerted police. Just minutes later, at 7:17 a.m., the Parkton local commuter train, traveling the same route on a nearby track, was diverted in time to avoid striking the body. Had the express train engineer not seen it when he did, the Parkton local likely would have run over the scene, destroying any chance of recovering physical evidence. The victim was semi-nude, wearing only 3 pairs of bobby socks, a pink sweater, a bra, a scarf, and a bandana. She had curlers in her hair. There were burrs in her hair and clothing indicating she may have possibly been dragged to the location under the 2-lane iron bridge. The name Paul was inscribed on her right thigh in either red lipstick or grease paint. Her cause of death was skull fracture, and her time of death was placed at 11 p.m. the previous evening. It would be 12 hours before she was identified. Later that same day, Henry C. Gable of 2225 Gable Avenue noticed a trail of blood running across Gable Avenue toward the field which lies behind an auto glass company building. Mrs. Ida Rice of 2224 Gable also noticed the bloodstains. They called police. Police arrived to search the field, which was about 300 yards off Washington Boulevard at Gable Avenue. It was a vacant lot near the B&O Railroad Mount Wyanshard. A pair of black moccasins were found, as well as one earring, along with pieces of a medallion-type locket and metal hair clip, later identified as similar to those Carolyn had worn. A wooden-handled screwdriver and rocks smeared with blood were also found. Police determined the vacant lot was the scene of Carolyn's attack, since her shoes and other articles were found there. While it was 8 to 10 miles from where her body was found, the lot was only a half mile from her home. Police theorized that she had been beaten in the field, transported, dead or unconscious, and bleeding, to the railroad bridge, then dropped off in the belief a passing train would mangle her body. Fortunately, the Pennsy engineer spotted her before that happened. Police believed whatever car she was transported in would be soaked with blood. Carolyn's black corduroy jacket and black skirt with arrowhead designs of pink and blue were never found. Her rings were also missing: a diamond ring her father had given her, a man's wide ruby ring, and a religious ring. Those two have never been found. Police interviewed scores of young boys and men, most of whom Carolyn had dated. They also interviewed Peggy, Carolyn's friend that she was supposed to meet that evening. Peggy reported that Carolyn never showed. Carolyn's father became convinced the killer was a member of the Drape gang in either Lansdale or Morrell Park. He told police that a week prior to her death, Carolyn had been beaten by an 18-year-old member of the Drape who had served a prison sentence for car theft. Carolyn had been a witness at his trial. Lieutenant Charles Morris of the Towson Fire Department reported seeing a dark-topped, light-colored car parked on the bridge without lights at about 11:40 p.m. As he approached, the car sped off, running a red light at Rogers and Belvedere Avenues and turning onto Clybourne Avenue. Police theorized this was the killer who was scared off by Morris and later returned to place Carolyn's dead body on the tracks below. Police worked to determine what Carolyn was doing during the 5 hours between the time she left home and the time the medical examiner said she was killed. It should have taken Carolyn 10 minutes to get to the place she was meeting Peggy. However, a neighbor, Mrs. Oscar Rice, saw Carolyn walking alone about 20 yards from Washington Boulevard at 6:45 p.m. This caused police to wonder if Carolyn had met someone. At 7 p.m., she entered a Washington Boulevard restaurant, presumably the Southway, although that is not clear from the reports. Shortly before an air raid alert sounded at 8:50 p.m., a racetrack blacksmith saw Carolyn and another girl walking toward Hammond's Ferry Road. Minutes later, he saw the same two girls in the back booth of a restaurant, smoking and carrying on. It's unclear if this was the Southway, but it suggests Carolyn made multiple stops that night. No real suspects were ever developed. Beat cops were told to be on the lookout for stolen or abandoned cars and to check all tailors and cleaning establishments along their posts for bloodstained clothing. While several abandoned cars were found and bloodstained clothing was turned over by one laundry, the leads produced nothing of value. Scores of people arrived at the Charles W. K. House funeral home to view Carolyn's body. With her girlfriends as pallbearers, her casket was carried into St. Peter the Apostle Roman Catholic Church at Bobbleton and Holland Streets, where Reverend Dubinskus offered a requiem mass. Carolyn was laid to rest in Most Holy Redeemer Cemetery in Baltimore, near the grave of her grandfather. It's been more than 70 years since Carolyn's life was taken, violently, suddenly, and without justice. She was only 14, trying to find her place in a world that didn't offer many choices to girls like her. A world where stepping outside the lines could cost you your reputation or your life. Carolyn's story still lingers, not just because it remains unsolved, but because it reminds us how fragile a life can be. She was a teenager, navigating a difficult world, searching for belonging in a time that offered little grace to girls who stepped outside of expectations. And for reasons we still don't fully understand, someone decided her story should end. And yet, all these years later, we're still talking about her. That matters, because when we remember, we push back against the silence. We honor the life that was and the justice that never came. No one was ever charged, no one ever stood trial, and the questions still hang in the air like the cold November night she disappeared. Did someone silence Carolyn because of what she knew, or who she was becoming? We may never know who took Carolyn's life, but we can choose to see her clearly now, not through the lens of scandal, but through compassion. She deserved that then, and she still does. If you have any thoughts or theories about this case, please leave them in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and may the truth reveal itself in the shadows.